Okay, I think that we are back online. So in the last part, we saw that Joshua is one of these people in whom we can see a picture of Messiah. And when we see these people, we learn something through them about the gospel. We learn something through them about the good news. So what we should expect to see in Joshua's life is we should expect to see some kind of mention of this number 3. And I'm not saying that every time in the Bible you see the number 3, it's to do with the Messiah. I don't know. I've not checked them all out. But commonly, when you see this, it is. So we're up to verse 10, chapter 1. Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, "Pass through the midst of the camp and command the people, saying, prepare food for yourselves, for within 3 days you are passing over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which Jehovah your Elohim is giving you to possess." Okay, now this is interesting. We think, okay, they're told to prepare food for these 3 days. Seems like a fairly reasonable thing to be told. But in Joshua 5, it says, "The children of Israel camped in Gilgal, performed the Passover on the 14th day of the Chodesh at evening on the desert plains of Jericho. And they ate of the stored grain of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened bread and roasted grain on this same day. And the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the stored grain of the land. And the children of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate the food of the land of Canaan that year." So, before this, what they were eating was manna. So, in what we're reading, what they were eating was manna. And they're told, take this manna and prepare enough of it for 3 days. So we know when it came to the Shabbat, for example, they were told to bake and cook what they wanted to and leave the rest over until the morning. Here, we also see that they're told to prepare food for 3 days this time in advance. So the manna could be taken and prepared in advance. Verse 12 says, "And Yahushua spoke to the Reubenites and to the Gadites and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, saying, Remember the word which Moshe, servant of Yehovah, commanded you, saying, Yehovah your Elohim is giving you rest, and he shall give you this land." And this word here is nuach. Nuach is the word for rest that you sometimes see associated with the Sabbath rest. So we've got this preparation of food for 3 days, and then we've got this mention of the same sort of rest that you get on the Sabbath. I don't know if they're connected, but it stuck out to me. So Elohim's giving you rest, and he shall give you this land. Let your wives, your little ones, and your livestock stay in the land which Moshe gave you beyond the Jordan, but you shall pass before your brothers in 5s, all your brave fighters, and shall help them. So when they came to this area, they saw that it was good for raising flocks on, and they said to Moshe, "Can we have this land as our inheritance?" Moshe asked Yehovah, they're allowed to keep that land, but they have to go and fight in the land of Canaan. So their land is on the other side of the Jordan, but when all of Israel cross over the Jordan, they were told, you're going to have to go over and you're going to have to fight. Your little ones and your wives can stay on the other side, where you guys, you've got to come over. You can't just dwell there and not help the rest of Israel. Until Yehovah has given your brothers rest as unto you, so shall they also take possession of the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving them. Then you shall return to the land of your possession and shall possess that which Moshe the servant of Yehovah gave you beyond the Jordan toward the rising of the sun. So this is the fulfillment, if you like, of what we saw in Torah portions Matot and Maseh. They answered Joshua, saying, "All that you have commanded us, we do, and wherever you send us, we go. According to all that we obeyed Moshe, so we obey you. Only let Yehovah your Elohim be with you, as he was with Moshe. Whoever rebels against your command and does not obey your words in all that you command him is put to death. Only be chazak and be amatz. So they're saying, let Yehovah be with you as he was with Moshe. We want you to be chazak and we want you to be amatz. And interestingly, they say, whoever rebels against your command shall be put to death, which is something that we read in the Torah in Deuteronomy 17. Obviously, Deuteronomy was what was read to these people by Moshe. So they've recognized this is the way that the Torah says that it should be done. And they've said, okay, this is the way that it shall be. We will obey the Torah. So one of these atbash we see in this account that we've seen so far, we've been through the first, say, 12 verses of the book of Joshua. So one of these chiastic structures that's going to point us to something important is at the beginning, Yehovah commanded the people to prepare to take the land. Joshua gave the command to prepare to possess the land at the end. Yisrael will receive the land spoken of by Moshe. That's what's mentioned in Joshua 1 verse 3. Joshua 1:13, remember what Moshe told you, Yehovah will give you the land. Same elements we're seeing here. Yehovah gave the boundaries of the land with respect to water barriers, which were the Mediterranean and the Euphrates rivers. And he uses the phrase towards the setting of the sun. So he says, this is going to be the land, these are going to be the barriers, and the water barriers. At the end, Joshua gave the barriers of the inheritances of Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. So those 2.5 tribes that were on the other side of the Jordan, he gives the boundaries of their inheritance with respect to the Jordan River 2 times. Again, he uses the phrase, towards the rising of the sun. Yehovah promised to be faithful to Joshua. Yehovah will be with Joshua as he was with Moshe. No man shall be able to stand up to him. The end, Yisrael promises to be faithful to Joshua. They will heed Joshua as long as Yehovah is with him as he was with Moshe, and they will even kill anyone who rebels against him. See, Yehovah says, no man will stand against you, and Israel effectively say the same thing to him. As I was with Moshe, I'll be with you. I am with you wherever you go, we see later on. I will not forsake you. Do not fear, nor lose resolve. Be strong and courageous. Behold, I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. I will cause the people to inherit the land. You will make your way successful and act wisely in the land. Observe the Torah. Observe the Torah. You shall not deviate from it. The Torah shall not depart from your mouth. It's effectively the same thing. And then the central point that it's pointing to, the part of the text that our attention is being drawn to at these things, is you will succeed wherever you go. Yahushua, son of Nun, secretly sent out 2 men from Shittim to spy, saying, go see the land in Jericho. And they went and came to the house of a woman, a prostitute, and her name was Rachav, and they lay down there. But it was reported to the king of Jericho, saying, see, men from the children of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. And the king of Jericho sent to Rachav, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. These elements of this narrative we're going to see in other narratives elsewhere in Scripture, which is all going to help us put together this picture of the gospel and what it is that the Tanakh teaches us about the gospel. The woman had taken the 2 men and she hid them. So she said, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it came to be, as the gate was being shut when it was dark, that the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly so that you overtake them. But she brought them up to the roof and had hidden them with stalks of flax, which she laid out on the roof. And the men pursued them, by the way to the Jordan, to the fords, and they shut the gate afterwards as soon as the pursuers had come out. So they come to her, and the pursuers come and they say, well, where are the men? She's hidden the men, but she says, I don't know where they've gone. Quick, you better go out and pursue them while you can find them. Before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, I know that Yehovah has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of you. Okay, so she has seen what Yehovah has done. She's not a part of Israel, but she's seen what Yehovah has done and his power. For we have heard how Yehovah dried up the water of the Sea of Reeds for you when you came out of Mitzrayim, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you put under the ban. Part of what the gospel is, part of what the good news is, part of what salvation is, remembering the word salvation and the word deliverance are the same word in Hebrew and in Greek. Part of it is this defeat of the enemy. Okay, and part of what she recognizes is within Yehovah's power, what she specifically says is his defeat of the enemy. We saw what you did to the enemy, what Yehovah did. And when we heard, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in anyone because of you. For Yehovah your Elohim, he is Elohim in heavens above and on earth beneath. And now please swear to me by Yehovah, since I have shown you kindness, that you also show kindness to my father's house, and shall give me a true token, and shall spare my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters and all that they have, and shall deliver or save, same word, our souls from death. So this Gentile woman, having seen the salvation or the deliverance that Yehovah has brought to Israel, she asks that salvation is brought, that their souls are saved. And the men said to her, our souls for yours. If you do not expose this matter of ours, then it shall be when Yehovah has given us the land that we shall treat you in kindness and truth. Of course, this being a picture of Yeshua, who gave his soul for ours. His soul went to Sheol for 3 days before he was risen back to life. When we go into the land, we'll treat you in kindness and truth. And she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall, and she dwelt on the wall. She said to them, go to the mountain, lest the pursuers come upon you, and you shall hide there 3 days, until the pursuers have returned, and afterwards you'll go on your way. So 3 days, you're in a situation where you're being pursued to be killed. After 3 days, you'll come back. The men said to her, we are released from this oath of yours, which you have made us swear, unless when we come into the land, you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you bring your father and your mother and your brothers and your father's household to your own home. And it shall be that anyone who goes outside the doors of your house into the street, his blood is on his own head, and we are innocent. And anyone who is with you in the house, his blood is on our head if a hand is laid upon him. If you expose this matter of ours, then we shall be released from your oath which you made us swear. So, what can we see from the structures of this that teach us about the gospel? There's a number of things in there that possibly stuck out to you from other narratives. But let's see what's there. First element, Rachav says, go to the mountains lest the pursuers see you. Hide 3 days until the pursuers turn back. Last element, after arriving at the mountain, the spies hid 3 days until the pursuers turned back. The pursuers couldn't find them because they were hiding. So the exact same elements are mentioned again at the end. Spies said, you shall tie this cord of scarlet thread in your window. Spies also said, we are absolved of this oath unless. At the end, the spies said, if you relate this discussion, we will be absolved of our oath. And then we've got the tying of the scarlet cord in the window. The spies said, "Bring your father and his entire house, your mother and brothers, into the house." The end, or more towards the end, this is actually one verse apart. Anyone who stays with you in the house. So her mother's, her brothers and her father and all the rest are mentioned. The central element of this is anyone who leaves the doors of your house for the outside, his blood will be on his own head and we will be absolved. Okay, so what does this relate to us regarding the gospel? Exodus 12:22-23, you shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood. Okay, so you've got the scarlet that is in the basin. And you strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out of the door of his house until morning. And Yehovah shall pass on to smite the Mitzrites, and shall see the blood, the scarlet, on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts. And Yehovah shall pass over the door and not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. So we've got the blood of the Passover lamb. Yeshua is our Passover lamb. They put it as a sign on the house, and they say, anyone who's in the house, they're going to be okay, but you can't leave the house. Exactly as is given to Rachav, who's also got to give this sign with the scarlet cord in her window, so that those in her house, their souls will be saved or delivered. Joshua 2:3-7, we see this. The king sent people to Rachav looking for the spies. In verse 7, the men of Jericho pursued the spies. Joshua 2:4, Rachav hid the spies. Joshua 2:6, Rachav hid the spies on a roof in the stalks of the flax. It's mentioned again, the same elements. Rachav stated, I don't know where they're from. Later, I don't know where they went. And the central element, the spies left Jericho through the city gate when it was about to close at dark. It seems like a bit of a strange element for all of the chiasm to be pointing to. You know, you could say, well, Yeshua is the gate and he saves us from darkness and we move into light and all that sort of stuff. And that would be perfectly valid. But there's more to this. What we see throughout all of these scriptures, throughout all of what Yeshua would call Torah, the prophets, the writings, the Torah of Moshe, we see these accounts which teach us about the gospel. And often these accounts are linked one to another by a particular thing. So here we've got a mention of the gates and darkness. We remember that Samson is this messianic figure. We compare the 2 spies, Samson and the gates. We'll see these things being linked together. Joshua 2:1, Joshua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 spies to spy secretly, saying, go view the land. In Judges 16:1, we've got Shimshon going to Azar, or Gaza. Joshua 2:1, they came to a prostitute's house named Rachav. Judges 16, Shimshon saw a prostitute and he went in unto her. And lodged there is mentioned in the 2 spies. Shimshon lay till midnight and arose at midnight. So he lodged there too. Joshua 2:2, they told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, there came men in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country. In Judges 16, it was told to the Azathites, saying, Shimshon is come thither. Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country, is what is said in Joshua. In Judges, they compassed him in, and they laid wait for him. The woman took the 2 men, and she hid them. Shimshon was hidden inside the harlot's house. It came to pass about the time of shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Samson, he arose at midnight when it was dark, and he took the doors of the gate of the city. And the final element, we've got, it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet and the people shouted with a great shout that the wall fell down flat. This is what we have at the end of the narrative about Jericho. So with Samson, he took the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, and he went away with them, bar and all, obviously, so that they could gain entrance to the city. If we look at this again from another aspect, we've got the spies went to observe, to see, or to re'eh Jericho. In Judges, Samson went to Azar, and he saw a harlot, same word that is used there. The spies stayed at the house of a harlot. Samson stayed with the harlot. The spies lodged at Rahab's house. Samson slept with the harlot, and he arose from his sleep at midnight. The king of Jericho was told that the Israelites had come into Jericho. The Azathites were told that Shimshon had come into Azar. The pursuers tried to capture the 2 Israelite spies. The Azathites lay in wait for Shimshon to catch him. The spies remained hidden from their pursuers. Although the Azathites laid in wait at the city gate, Shimshon was hidden from them, for we read of no resistance from the Azathites at the city gates. Okay, they're there waiting for him, but when he comes in, they don't do anything. Rachav told the king that the spies had left through the city gate when it was dark and the city gate was about to close, and Shimshon left through the city gate at midnight. The point that it's leading us to, the Israelites breached the wall around Jericho and the entire wall fell down. So that's what happens when the trumpet sounds, as we saw in the other one. The walls fell down. So here, the result of that is the Israelites breached the wall. And here, Samson, one of Yehovah's people, breached the wall around Azar by taking its city gates. So we see this relation to the 2 things. This ultimate thing that it's pointing us to here is the same thing that the chiastic structure was pointing us to. So these things are important things. They're linking these 2 narratives as important. So, what can we learn about the gospel, about salvation or deliverance in the stories of the spies and Samson? Rachav stated, "We've heard how Yehovah dried up the waters of the Red Sea. Sihon and Og, Yisrael's enemies, were utterly destroyed. Samson killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. Samson became very thirsty." Okay, we've got this mention of the waters being dried up. Now we've got the vanquishing of the enemy. Samson became very thirsty and said, "You have granted this great salvation through the hand of your servant, and now shall I die of thirst." So this salvation was brought by Moshe with his outstretched arm, a drying up of the water. Here we've got the enemy being vanquished and the mention of thirst. This was done by splitting the Red Sea in Joshua. That's what's mentioned in Joshua. Judges, this was done by splitting the hollow of the jawbone, same word that's used there. Rachav stated, "No spirit remained in any man because of you." In Judges, again we've got the mention of the Ruach. His Ruach returned to him and he was revived. All of these elements are to do with salvation. They're to do with the gospel. Rachav requested that the spies take an oath to spare her life. Here, Samson had the tribe of Judah swear that they wouldn't kill him. So we've got 2 oaths that they wouldn't be killed. Rachav lowered the spies by a rope and told them to go to a mountain to hide. In Judges, they bind Samson with ropes, same word used, and they brought him up and said they're lowering him down from a rock. The final element is that the spies are told to hide for 3 days before going on their way. Picture of Yeshua. And then with Samson, Samson defeats the enemy. All of this is teaching us about the good news. It's teaching us about deliverance in salvation as it pertains to us. This defeating of the enemy tied to the 3 days laying low before you go on your way Okay, Yeshua conquering death by as when he was resurrected after 3 days. 1 Corinthians 15:26 tells us that the last enemy to be brought to naught, the last thing that we get deliverance or salvation from, the last enemy is death. See, we have a real inaccurate view of what salvation is. Salvation is all about being delivered from one's enemies. Okay, something which is stronger than you, that you are powerless to defeat, being defeated by Yehovah. And that's what we're seeing in all of these narratives. It is especially true of death. Death is an enemy that we are unable to conquer on our own, and we need the salvation or the deliverance of Yehovah to overcome. Okay, so if we look at a chiastic structure in Joshua 2, we'll see what else we can learn. Rachav hid the spies on the roof in stalks of flax. The pursuers chased them towards the Jordan crossing, and the pursuers went in the wrong direction. Rachav lowered the spies by a rope. She lived high on the city wall. She told the spies to hide for 3 days until the pursuers turned back, then continue, and the pursuers went in the wrong direction. Different verses, but it's the same thing which is mentioned in each of them. Rachav said, I know Yehovah has given you the land. Swear to me by Yehovah. The spy said, when Yehovah gives us the land, our souls for yours. And the middle point in that is Rahab saying, give me a sign or a token that you will keep me alive, or you keep alive my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all that's theirs. How? By saving our souls from death. The salvation of the soul, the deliverance of the soul from the ultimate enemy being death. So all of this is right there all the way through the scriptures. It teaches us of who Yeshua is and what Yeshua was going to do. Now, if we compare the 2 spies in Joshua 2 with another set of 2 spies that we'll see, we'll establish a connection between the 2 narratives. 2 Yisraelites are spies for Yahushua, for Joshua. Yehonathan and Ahimaaz are 2 spies for David. 2 spies were given military intelligence, and they were told to deliver it to Joshua. Yehonathan and Ahimaaz were given military intelligence, and they're told, deliver it to David, the ones that they're spies for. 2 spies come to Rachav's house in Jericho. We've got Yehonathan and Ahimaaz came to a house in Bahurim. Rachav gave the spies military intelligence. Here we have a girl giving Yehonathan and Ahimaaz military intelligence. It was told to the king of Jericho that the 2 spies had come in. A young man saw Yehonathan and Ahimaaz come in and told Avshalom. Rachav helped the 2 spies hide on the roof, and a woman helped Yehonathan and Ahimaaz hide in a well. It's the same narrative. It's that thing where the word of Elohim is the same throughout time. All that we have is different characters playing out the same things over and over again. Rachav covered the 2 spies with stalks of flax. A woman covered the well containing Yehonathan and Ahimaaz with groats. The king of Jericho's servants inquired about the 2 spies, and then Avshalom's servants inquired about Yehonathan and Ahimaaz. Rachav told the king of Jericho's servants that the 2 spies had fled. A woman told Avshalom's servants that Yehonathan and Ahimaaz had fled. The king of Jericho's servants searched for the 2 spies but couldn't find them. Avshalom's servants searched for Yehonathan and Ahimaaz but couldn't find them. The 2 spies emerged from hiding after the king of Jericho's servants had left. They emerged after they'd left, and Yehonathan and Ahimaaz emerged after Avshalom's servants had left. The 2 spies crossed over the Yarden. The woman said that Yehonathan and Ahimaaz had crossed over the Yarden. This is why when we have issues in our lives, that we can look to the word of Elohim and we can find what the solution is from that. We can find times when people have encountered similar things and done something the wrong way and how that didn't work out, or what is the correct way to do it. This is why the word is living and why it's cyclical. The two spies delivered the military intelligence to Yahushua. Yehonathan and Achimaatz delivered the military intelligence to David, ultimately. So there's this linkage between those two spies and the two spies in David. We know that the two spies teach us about the gospel in Joshua. We'll see the same thing in the narrative in 2 Samuel. So at the beginning of this chiastic structure, Yehonathan and Achimaatz descend into a well. Again, it's descending into the pit. A woman spread a curtain over the well. The end, Joab's men throw Avshalom's body into a large pit and erect a mound of stones over the top. So these same things. Ahithophel's suicide by hanging. We see Avshalom dead at the end, hanging in the tree. Avshalom appointed Amasa over his army in place of Joab. David's position at Mahanaim is mentioned. We've got David appointing officers at the end. David's position is mentioned again near the city gate. And all of this is pointing us to the middle, which is something which is going to tell us something about salvation, about deliverance, about the good news. 3 men brought David and his servants provisions because they were hungry, exhausted, and thirsty in the desert. Okay? As opposed to, adding drunkenness to thirst. For us, in the picture of salvation, hunger, exhaustion that we have in our thirst is met. And again, we have the number 3 mentioned. In Joshua 2, it continues and says, "And she said, 'Let it be according to your words.' And she sent them away, and they went, and she bound the scarlet cord in the window. So they left and came to the mountain and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. And the pursuers sought them in all the way, but they did not find them." So they were trying to kill them. They hid there for 3 days, and then they came out to life. The 2 men returned. They came down from the mountain. They passed over, and they came to Yahushua, son of Nun, and they related to him all that had befallen them. And they said to Yahushua, "Truly Yehovah has given all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land have melted away because of us." Again, another aspect of salvation. This will happen at the end, the salvation which is yet to come, when Yeshua comes and defeats the enemy before us to lead us into the land. When it will be said, "Truly Yehovah has given all of the land into our hands." Or something else to remember about Rachav. Okay, something else to do with salvation, deliverance, and the good news. Rachav is a Gentile. Rachav isn't a part of Israel. In Isaiah 56, 3-5, it says, "And let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yehovah speak, saying, 'Yehovah has certainly separated me from his people.' Nor let the eunuch say, 'Look, I am a dry tree.' For thus said Yehovah to the eunuchs who guard my Sabbaths and have chosen what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant, those foreigners who do this. To them I shall give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off." So something we can learn from Rechav is that Yehovah will accept these people into covenant, those people who take hold of the Sabbath, those people who take hold of the covenant. And this is an integral part of the gospel as explained in the New Testament writings. In Isaiah 42, 1-7, it says, "See my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, my soul has delighted in. I have put my spirit upon him. He brings forth justice to the nations. Okay, so this is a prophecy of Yeshua. And this is part of this deliverance, part of the salvation. The enemy will be wiped out, but those who want to join with Yehovah and hold fast to his covenant will be a part of his people. He does not cry out, nor lifts up his voice, nor causes his voice to be heard in the street. A crushed reed he does not break, and a smoking flax he does not quench. Okay, this is the position that the Gentiles are in. Okay, he doesn't see them as a crushed reed or a smoking flax and just snub them out or crush them because he can. He brings forth justice in accordance with truth. He does not become weak or crushed. He has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his Torah. Thus said the El, Yehovah, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread forth the earth and that which comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it and a spirit to those who walk on it. So the Gentiles. I, Yehovah, have called you in righteousness, and I take hold of your hand and guard you and give you, Yeshua, for a covenant to a people, for a light to the Gentiles. So it was written that this is part of Messiah's purpose. Okay, but this was not made clear until we have the New Testament writings, as we'll see. To open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, those who sit in darkness from the prison house. So this is an integral part of what is prophesied in the Tanakh about Messiah. In Luke 2:27-32, we've got Simeon, or Shimon. He came in the spirit to the set-apart place, the temple of Yehovah. And as the parents brought in the child Yeshua to do for him according to the usual practice of the Torah, then he took him up in his arms and blessed Elohim. He's been told that he will not die until he sees the salvation of Elohim. Now let your servant go in peace. He's saying, I can die now. O Master, according to your word, for my eyes have seen your deliverance. They've seen your salvation. They've seen your Yeshua, perhaps in Hebrew, which you have prepared before the face of all the people. So he recognizes this in what he's saying. It's not just to Israel. It's the salvation to all of the people. A light for the unveiling of the Gentiles and the esteem of your people, Israel. That's what Yeshua is. Ephesians 3:4-6 says, in reading this then, you are able to understand my insight into the secret of Messiah, which was not made known to the sons of men in other generations, as it has now been revealed by the Spirit to his set-apart apostles and prophets, the Gentiles to be co-heirs, united in the same body and partakers together in the promise in Messiah through the good news. So this, as we've seen, is encoded in the Tanakh. All of these elements of salvation, these elements of Yeshua, the Messiah, were encoded in the Tanakh. But Paul says here, now you see my insight. This was not revealed to people before. It was right there in the scriptures for them. Well, this is part of the secret of the Messiah, the promise through the good news. This is the gospel. Galatians 3:28-29. There is not Jew nor Greek. There's not slave nor free. There's not male nor female. For you are all one in Messiah Yeshua. You are all Israel. There's no house of Judah and Gentiles, and there's no separation there. You're all one now in Messiah Yeshua. And if you are of Messiah, then you are the seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise of the land. That promise which was given to Abraham. The Gentiles, as Paul was writing, the secret of Messiah is that the Gentiles through him would be able to become co-heirs. And this is an element of the gospel. I bring all of this together at the end of the next Torah portion that I do. But I want you to recognize all these individual elements of the gospel. Romans 11:7-12 says, what then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the chosen did obtain it, and the rest were hardened. So this is Israel, the physical descendants of Jacob, or the descendants of Israel. All of them did not obtain what they were seeking for. Okay, the ones who were the chosen, the Yahovah had chosen according to his foreknowledge, those who would submit to him and would follow him by faith, they obtained it, but the rest of them were hardened. As it has been written, Yahovah has given them a spirit of deep sleep, eyes not to see and ears not to hear unto this day. So this is Israel. David also says, let their table become for a snare and for a trap and for a stumbling block and a recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened not to see and bow down their back always. I say then, if all of this is true about Israel, have they stumbled that they should fall? Is that what Yahovah's purpose in this is? Did he just want them to not get it and to fall and to stumble and not make it into the kingdom? Let it not be. But by their fall, deliverance or salvation has come to the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy, to provoke Israel to jealousy, that the Gentiles are all going to come to Yahovah and they're all going to be Yahovah's people. If their fall, if Israel's fall is riches for the world and their failure riches for the Gentiles, how much more their completeness? So when the Gentiles come to Yahovah, if that's a good thing that Yahovah has used their fall for, how much more will he be able to use the submission and the faith of Israel? An example of this, the Gentiles coming to Yahovah and Israel being jealous, we see in Acts 13. Verse 42 says, and when the Jews went out of the congregation, the Gentiles begged to have these words spoken to them the next Sabbath. Okay, the Jews who had the word of Yahovah and made their boast, oh, we've got the Torah, we were given the oracles of Yahovah, we've got the word of Yahovah, and yet they didn't follow it by faith. The Gentiles, when they heard the words of Yahovah, they begged to have them spoken to them. And when the meeting of the congregation had broken up, many of the Jews and of the worshipping converts followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them were urging them to continue in the favor or the grace of Elohim. And on the next Sabbath, almost all the city came together to hear the word of Elohim. These are Gentiles. All of them have come together. They heard the words and they begged that they would hear them again. But when the Jews saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy. And contradicting and speaking evil, they opposed what Shaul was saying. But speaking boldly, Shaul and Barnabas said, it was necessary that the word of Elohim should be spoken to you first, to the Jew first, but also to the Gentiles. But since you thrust it away and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, see, we turn to the Gentiles. So by Israel's fall, by the fact that they thrust the word of Elohim away from them, salvation has come to the Gentiles, that it would make Israel, the natural born tree, that it would make them jealous. For the Master has commanded us, I have set you to be a light to the Gentiles, that you should be deliverance to the ends of the earth, or salvation to the ends of the earth. So it's in the New Testament that we begin to see all of these prophecies, all these things that were encoded within the Tanakh. We start to see the fulfillment of all of them. And when the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and praised the word of Yahovah, and as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. In Isaiah 62, I think it's probably 1-5 actually. For Zion's sake, I am not silent. And for Yerushalayim's sake, I do not rest, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her deliverance or her salvation as a lamp that burns, until Yerushalayim's salvation or deliverance goes forth as a light to the Gentiles. Remember, Israel has fallen to bring the Gentiles in. And if that was used for good, how much more their completeness? The nations shall see your righteousness, and all kings your esteem. Okay, Yahovah, if you give him more to work with, he can achieve even more. And in the millennium, Yerushalayim was going to go out as a light to the Gentiles. This is the end of Isaiah. We'll see that this is how Isaiah began as well. You shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahovah designates. You shall be a crown of comeliness in the hand of Yahovah, and a royal headdress in the hand of your Elohim. You will be a beautiful thing. Lift up your eyes all around and see, all of them have gathered. They have come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are supported on the side. Then you shall see and be bright, and your heart shall throb and swell. For the wealth of the sea is turned to you. The riches of the Gentiles shall come to you, to Jerusalem. A stream of camels cover your land, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All those from Shavah come bearing gold and incense, and they're proclaiming the praises of Yahovah, like the Gentiles who heard the word in the book of Acts, here on a much greater scale. All the flocks of Kedar are gathered to you. The rams of Nebaioth serve you. They come up for acceptance on my altar, and I embellish my esteemed house. This is when they come to Yerushalayim, which is how the book of Isaiah begins. Isaiah 2:2-4. It shall be in the latter days. There are many periods of time that are referred to as the latter days in Scripture, that the mountain of the house of Yahovah is established on top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations, all of the Gentiles, shall flow to it. Many peoples shall come and say, come and let us go up to the house of Yahovah, to the house, the Elohim of Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, just like in the book of Acts. And let us walk in his paths, for out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahovah from Yerushalayim. And Yerushalayim is a light to the Gentiles. And he shall judge between the nations, and he will reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. And indeed, Yeshua will judge between nations when he comes and he sits on the throne of his glory and he separates the sheep from the goats. He has all nations laid before him. Jeremiah 16 talks of the Gentiles turning to Yahovah. Yahovah, my strength, my stronghold, and my refuge in the day of distress. The Gentiles shall come to you from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited only falsehood and futility, and there is no value in them. Would a man make gods for himself which are not gods, powerless gods? Therefore, see, I am causing them to know. This time I cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is Yahovah. This is a part of the gospel, that this salvation would be offered to the Gentiles too. As we've seen, all of it's there, it's encoded into the Tanakh, and all of the structures, it's right there in prophecy, and we see the fulfillment in Yeshua. Matthew 12:18-21. See my servant whom I have chosen. This is the passage that we read before being quoted. My beloved in whom my soul did delight. I shall put my spirit upon him, and he shall declare justice to the nations. He shall not strive nor cry out, nor shall anyone hear his voice in the streets. A crushed reed he shall not break, and smoking flax he shall not quench, till he brings forth judgment forever. And the nations shall trust in his name. This is what we're seeing a picture of in this story with Joshua. Okay, Joshua being this picture of Messiah. You see, this is exactly what Rachav is doing. And now, please swear to me by Yahovah. She's trusting in Yahovah's name. She's seeing the deliverance that he's brought. She's seeing the salvation brought by his mighty hand, by Moshe's outstretched arm in the Red Sea. Since I have shown you kindness, that you also show kindness to my father's house, shall give me a true token. Shall spare my father and my mother, and my brothers and my sisters, and all that they have, and shall deliver our souls from death. The gospel right here in the book of Joshua. We'll come back in the third part, and we'll finish looking at Joshua and the parting of the Red Sea.